NESN.com presents The Hurry Up.
Welcome into week 3 of The Hurry Up. I am your host, Michaela Vernava, and the theme of week 2, injuries, and the implications, of course, carrying over into this week for many teams and possibly even your fantasy team. If that's the case, you're definitely going to want to stick around because we have got some advice for you. And of course, the New England Patriots, one of those teams hit hard with the injury bug when Jimmy Garoppolo went down against the Dolphins. So without further ado, let's send it right out to Doug Kyde in Foxborough.
If you thought Jimmy Garoppolo had it difficult in his first NFL career start, it's even harder now for rookie Jacoby Brissett, who does have to make his first NFL career start in his first season. Just came off his first NFL playing time in week 2 against the Miami Dolphins. Now the Patriots have an extremely short turnaround before they have to play the Houston Texans here on Thursday night. In week 3, Jacoby Brissett probably would like a long time to be able to review his tape from what he did against the Dolphins. But since the Patriots do have that short turnaround, they basically had to get into the Texans on Monday morning. So a lot of the mistakes that Brissett made out on the field there on Sunday probably won't get corrected that quickly now before they face the Texans. Overall, Jacoby Brissett did extremely well against the Dolphins given the circumstances. He went 6 of 9, and 2 of his incompletions were drops by the Patriots. The other incompletion was a smart throwaway. So Brissett made some good decisions, and that's what he's going to have to do against the Texans on Thursday night. He has to keep making those good decisions. His accuracy is there, his mobility is there, but it's really just about avoiding turnovers, avoiding mistakes. Finally, Brissett has to be a little bit more careful with himself. He did get out of the pocket, scramble around a little bit, and when he does that, he has to slide because any contact that he gets against the Texans is pretty unnecessary. He might be the only quarterback on the Patriots roster for that game. The Patriots can't afford to get him injured. You don't want Julian Edelman coming into the game as the Patriots' emergency quarterback.
All right, it's time to hit the waiver wire with Nick Goss. A lot of running backs continuing to get hurt. If you are one of those unfortunate owners that lost one, Nick, what's the best way to replace them?
I think Tevin Coleman's a good option this week. Atlanta Falcons, he had almost 50 yards rushing and a touchdown this week. He also had a couple catches. He's also splitting touches with Devontae Freeman, and as long as that happens, he should be fantasy relevant because the Falcons do put up a lot of points.
If you had Jonathan Stewart, you know, it hurts to see him go down, but I like Fozzie Whitaker to take his place. What do you think?
I like that a lot too. Whitaker had 100 yards rushing last week, also had a couple catches. The Panthers have a high-powered offense, and we know they're committed to the run. So whoever starts at running back, whether it's Whitaker or Stewart, I think they're worth owning and worth starting at least in the flex.
And we're seeing wide receivers continuing to shine in the fantasy world. There's still plenty out there available. Nick, who would you pick up?
I think Quincy Enunwa is a pretty good bet from the New York Jets. He has 13 catches on 14 targets this year, almost 150 yards receiving, as well as a touchdown. We know he's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker on the other side of the field as well. And Fitzpatrick throws a lot. I think there are plenty of catches to go around for him. I think he's a good flex option or a bye-week replacement.
All right, Nick, thanks for the advice. Now I'm going to hand it off to Zach Cox and Doug Kyde.
Zach, Patriots had some issues out there against the Dolphins on defense, especially second, third, and fourth quarter. I kind of have my own theory on this, but I'll ask you first. What do you think went wrong for them out there?
I think the Jimmy Garoppolo injury really just kind of threw them off. They were rolling. They looked like they were on their way to about a 50-point victory over the Miami Dolphins here. And that obviously wasn't the only factor, but it definitely seems like they lost a little focus there in the second half.
I think that is definitely an element of it. I'm going to go up to the top, though. I'm going to blame Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia. This happens a lot where you see the Patriots get off to an early lead, and then they get super conservative on defense. They start playing a little bit off man, off zone. They let up the small catches, and they all start to add up, and then all of a sudden the Patriots are playing to win late in the fourth quarter. Heading into this Texans game, obviously some very tough matchups. How do you think the Patriots kind of attack and defend DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller?
Really the biggest matchup in this entire game. Everybody knows how talented DeAndre Hopkins is, and Will Fuller is really, I'd say he's been one of the biggest breakout stars of this NFL season, only 2 weeks in. And as we saw here on this field just a couple days ago, Dolphins have some talented receivers of their own, and they really gave it to some of the Patriots cornerbacks out here.
I was talking to Deron Harmon this week, and he even said that, depending on what side of the field they're on, depending on the splits, the Patriots safeties are probably going to have to decide one way or another whether they're going to help out on Fuller or whether they're going to help out on Hopkins. If they're able to get Dante Hightower out here this week, that would certainly help. But Chris Long, Jabal Sheard, Trey Flowers, those guys definitely have to get after the passer faster.
I agree. I mean, I like what I've seen from Chris Long so far, but I think for a lot of the game here, he was really the only guy that was getting inconsistent pressure on Ryan Tannehill. Patriots really need to get after him, especially now that they're playing an inexperienced guy in Brock Osweiler. Get after the quarterback, make him work, make him hurry, then good things should happen.
Yeah, and the Patriots obviously know Osweiler very well. They know Bill O'Brien very well, so certainly will be an interesting matchup. Back to you guys.
All right, I'm here with Mike Cole. It's time for Week 3 picks. Mike, who is your lock this week?
The lock of the week, this one's a little controversial. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. They haven't looked great through the first 2 weeks despite winning Week 1. They looked awful on Sunday night in Minnesota, and they're 7.5-point favorites against the Lions this weekend. That being said, Aaron Rodgers, the last time he actually played well was at home in September last year against Kansas City and Seattle. He threw 7 touchdowns over 2 games, threw for nearly 600 yards. I like him to bounce back, maybe simplify that offense a little bit. And the defense has been really good, actually, so far this season. They're up there, near the top 10 in yards allowed per play, and they've been really good on third down. So, I just think it's a good matchup for them going back home against a Detroit team that's kind of looked not very good at all.
Well, history may be on their side, too. Aaron Rodgers is 11-3 lifetime against the Lions with 26 touchdowns and 6 interceptions.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. And who is your upset of the week?
My upset of this week is the San Francisco 49ers. They're getting 10 points on the road at Seattle. Usually not a great matchup for San Francisco, but you look at what Seattle's done so far this season. They've been terrible offensively. They were horrible last week in Los Angeles. You look at Russell Wilson, the ankle clearly is bothering him. It doesn't help that the Seahawks can't block anybody. So I think that, plus the fact that you look at Chip Kelly's offense, they've done a pretty good job through 2 games with San Francisco. They run a ton of plays, which kind of tires out the defense. They've also been really good on third down, despite facing some of the most third down opportunities in the league this season. That tells me they're getting the job done on first and second down. They're also creating turnovers. I like them to get 1 turnover to keep the game close. I think they cover.
Yeah, Mike, I like that pick because it's hard to believe that the Seahawks are double-digit favorites in this one, considering they've only scored 15 points in 2 weeks. And we can find more picks on your podcast.
Yeah, the spread, the NESN.com, most popular NESN.com NFL picks podcast in the country, the spread every week.
All right, guys, check that out. And now let's send it over to Zach Cox, who has power rankings.
The team that took the biggest leap in my Week 3 power rankings is the New England Patriots' next opponent, the Houston Texans, who improved to 2-0 and jump into the top 10 after their 19-12 win over the Kansas City Chiefs. It was another dominant effort by the Texans defense and another huge game for rookie wideout Will Fuller, who's now gone over 100 yards in each of his first 2 NFL games. We'll know a whole lot more about the Texans' chances after they visit New England this Thursday night. Next up, we're talking disappointments, and boy, were there a lot of them in Week 2. Jameis Winston and the Buccaneers got their teeth kicked in by the Cardinals, the young and exciting Jaguars laid an egg against San Diego, and the Raiders, a trendy playoff pick, allowed 35 points in a loss to the Atlanta Falcons. But worst of all for me were the Seattle Seahawks, who failed to find the end zone even once in a 9-3 loss to the LA Rams. For a team that's supposed to have Super Bowl aspirations, Seattle certainly hasn't looked the part so far, scoring just 1 touchdown over their first 8 quarters of football. As for the Patriots, they held off the Miami Dolphins on Sunday to improve to 2-0, and while I still view them as the favorites in the AFC East, if not the AFC as a whole, I have to bump them down a few spots this week solely because of the uncertainty that Jimmy Garoppolo's shoulder injury creates. I also didn't love what I saw from New England's highly touted defense on Sunday, as the Patriots nearly blew a 31-3 lead before holding on to win.
The name of the game is Show and Tell. It's where I bring objects in and I use them to give a few developing thoughts I have in the 2016 NFL season. The first object I'm bringing in, sunblock. And that's because the Oakland Raiders defense has been torched through the first 2 weeks. They've given up an NFL worst 808 passing yards, only team to give up more than 1,000 yards total, and only the Indianapolis Colts have given up more points through the first 2 weeks. It's a little bit troubling. I do think the Raiders will figure it out. They do have some talent on that defense, but listen, they got to get it together soon. Fortunately for them, they got a matchup in Week 3 against the Titans offense that, a little shaky to say the least. Now, speaking of stinking, I'm going to bring in some deodorant as my second object, the Old Spice sweat defense here. And that's because we're going to give this to the Jaguars head coach, Gus Bradley, because he's going to start sweating a little bit if the Jaguars don't figure it out over these next few weeks. They're 0-2 right now, coming off a disappointing loss to the San Diego Chargers in which they were trailing 35-0 after 3 quarters. The Jaguars are expecting to make noise this year. A lot of talent on that team, weak division, so they got to figure it out, or else Gus Bradley could be on the hot seat, start sweating a little bit. And finally, we got to bring in a snack. for good old Rex Ryan, who once said in 2010 during Hard Knocks, let's go get a goddamn snack. Well, guess what, Rex? You're going to have plenty of time to eat your snacks if you don't figure it out over these next 2 weeks. He said this is exactly what the Bills need. A matchup with the Cardinals and the Patriots, kind of show their moxie a little bit. Well, I don't know. I think those two teams are ready to accept the challenge. So, Rex, get your snacks ready because you might see you might be on the way out if you don't figure it out these next 2 weeks.
Never a dull moment with Ricky Doyle. Thanks so much, Ricky. That'll do it for this week's edition of The Hurry Up. You know we'll be right back at you next week. In the meantime, make sure to check out our podcasts and keep it locked on NESN.com for all your football news.